Students, in this session, we will discuss about procedure for investigating the stability using Nyquist criterion. And we have studied about the Nyquist criteria for stability. Next, we will find the procedure to determine the stability of a system using the Nyquist criteria. So, it will be given different steps for investigating the stability. And in this first step is that in the question we will be given by a function g of s into h of s, that is the open loop transfer function. And from that open loop transfer function we have to predict the stability by using Nyquist criteria. So first step is that we should choose a Nyquist condor. See, we can choose a Nyquist condor as shown in the figure A, figure B and figure C. And there are different condors and which are marked in the S-plane. See, this is S-plane and its real axis is this, imaginary axis is this one, j omega is the imaginary axis and Nyquist condor is here. The Nyquist condor is this one and we are sectionizing it C1, C2 part and C3 part. Similarly, there is another Nyquist condor which has a condor like this. And that is C1, C2, C3, C4. Similarly, there is another Nyquist condor that is in the form like this. So, first of all, we have to choose a Nyquist condor as shown in the figure. That means the Nyquist condor should encloses the entire right half S-plane except the singular points. See, this is a Nyquist condor. It includes C1, C2 and C3 and it should cover the entire right half S-plane. That is, right half is this section. So, it should cover entire right half S-plane. Right half S-plane, that means it should cover all the right half poles and all the right half zeros of g of s and h of s. So, g of s and h of s will be given in the question. So, you should select a condor in this form, such that this condor will encloses all the zeros and poles of this g of s and h of s. Similarly, sometimes there may be poles that is lying on the imaginary axis. So, when we are choosing this condor, we should avoid the poles which are lying at the origin. So, that is why this condor will have this form. See, this condor goes along the path C1, C2, C3 and C4. That means there is a pole at the origin. Similarly, if we have different poles at the imaginary axis like this, that is marked as crosses. One pole is there, one pole is there, one pole is there. That means there are different 3 condors at the imaginary axis. So, you should avoid taking that poles. So, the condor will be looking like this. That means this cross is avoided and here also this cross is avoided and here also this cross is avoided. So, it has got different parts, that is this part and a linear part and a curvature part, and this is a linear part and again a curved part, again a linear part and a curved part and a linear part. So, this is the way we are choosing the Nyquist condor. And the selection will be depending upon the number of poles. So, we will see it clearly in doing a problem. So, next, the Nyquist condor, second step is that Nyquist condor should be mapped in the g of s into h of s plane. See, this is in the s plane. Actually, it is a Nyquist condor which is in the s plane. Now, next we want to draw this, or we want to map this Nyquist condor in the S plane to Nyquist condor in the g of s into h of s plane. That means we have to map every point on this condor to another plane, that is of g of s into h of s plane, such that we will get a condor which is g of s into h of s condor. That means in the second step, the Nyquist condor should be mapped in the g of s h of s plane using the function g of s h of s. And we are doing this in order to determine the encirclement of minus 1 plus 0j point in the g of s into h of s plane. That means in order to predict the stability, we have to know the encirclement of the function, encirclement of the function with the point minus 1 plus 0j. So, that is why we are mapping the S plane condor into g of s into h of s plane. And also we have to determine the encirclement of encirclement minus 1 plus 0j point in the g of s into h of s plane. And here in the second figure, the contour is divided into 4 parts, C1, C2, C3 and C4. So we have to map each sections differently into the g of s h of s plane. First we will map C1 portion to g of s h of s plane, and next we will map C2 in the g of s h of s plane. Next we will do C3 and then we will do C4. Finally we will add all these in order to get the combined effect of all these points. So in the step 3, the section C1, you can see this is C1, this is C1. C1 value, C1 is a linear party and its value varies from, we can say that it starts from negative to positive, that is its value varies from 0 to, see here the arrow mark is from lower to upward direction, so its value varies from 0 to j omega or 0 to plus infinity. That means C1 value of, in the section C1, the value of omega varies from 0 to infinity, and the mapping of section C1 is obtained by letting s equal to j omega in g of s into h of s and varying omega from 0 to plus infinity. So in the next step we will be given g of s into h of s quantity. So we have to replace s with j omega. So we will get g of j omega into h of j omega. In that omega value, in the case of C1, omega value varies from, see this is the j omega axis, omega value varies from 0 to infinity. So the 0 to plus infinity. So when we are mapping all the points of g of j omega, h of j omega for corresponding omega values, we will get another contour. So that contour will be the g of j s h of s contour. That means the locus of g of j omega, h of j omega as omega is varied from 0 to infinity will be the g of s h of s contour in the g of s h of s plane. And that will be corresponding to the C1 contour in the S plane. So this plot or this mapping, we can say that this contour that is obtained in the g of s into h of s plane we can say that it is a polar plot of g of j omega and h of j omega. So we are mapping the Nyquist contour in the S plane to Nyquist contour in the g of s into h of s plane. When we get that plot, we can say that this contour is a polar plot. This locus is the polar plot of g of j omega and h of j omega. So there are 3 ways of mapping this section of g of s, h of s contour, and these 3 ways are, first way is we can calculate the values of g of j omega and h of j omega for various values of omega, and we can sketch the actual locus of g of j omega and h of j omega. That is a direct method. That means we have this function and we will map this function in the g of s into h of s plane by putting different values of omega varies from 0 to infinity to this equation. So we will get a mapping, and that is a direct method. And other 2 methods are, or either we can separate the real part and imaginary part of g of j omega and h of j omega, and we can equate the imaginary part to 0. When we equate the imaginary part to 0, we can find the frequency at which g of j omega into h of j omega locus crosses the real axis. When imaginary part will be equal to 0, that means we will get a value for the corresponding equation. We will give the values for omega. So that frequency or that omega represents the phase crossover frequency. That means at that point the locus or Nyquist locus or Nyquist plot in the g of s and h of s plane will crosses the real axis. So that is corresponding to the phase crossover frequency, and once we get that value of omega, we can substitute this frequency on the real part of this equation, and so that we will find the crossing point of the locus on the real axis, and then we can sketch the approximate locus of g of j omega, h of j omega from the knowledge of the type number and order of the system. So or we will get the values, we will get the curve from the values of g of j omega and h of j omega at omega equal to 0 to omega equal to infinity. See, we will see these steps when doing the problem, and the idea will be clear to you when we are doing with a problem. Okay. Next, there is another method also, and in this method we will separate real and imaginary parts and we will equate it to 0, and we will find a frequency omega which will be the phase crossover frequency, and then we will substitute that phase crossover frequency in the real part equal to 0 equation, and we will get the point where it crosses the real axis. And in the third method is we can separate the magnitude and phase of g of j omega and h of j omega, and we can equate the phase of the g of j omega h of j omega to minus 180 degree, and we can solve for omega so that we will get a value of omega, and this value of omega is the phase crossover frequency, and the magnitude at this frequency is crossing point on the real axis, and we can then sketch the approximate root locus as mentioned in the method 2. So in this case we will equate g of j omega and h of j omega. That means we will equate the equate the phase. You see, this is a this function has got a magnitude and phase, and phase of this portion, phase of this g of j omega and h of j omega will be equated into 1 minus 180 degrees, so that we will get a value for omega, and that omega value is the phase crossover frequency, and for that phase crossover frequency we will find the magnitude corresponding to this function, so that we will get the crossing point on the real axis, crossing point of this function on the real axis, and then we will draw the approximate curve of g of j omega and h of j omega for various values of omega, so that we will get a Nyquist plot or locus. And in the fourth step, suppose here we have a function c2. See, here is the case we have discussed about c1. Next we want to plot this part of Nyquist plot into g of s and h of s plane. See, you can see here that it is a curved path, right? And we are assuming that it is having of infinity radius. So that means radius varies from 0 to infinity, right? That is r tends to infinity. So in the case of C2, the section C2 of Nyquist contour has a semicircle of infinity radius. Therefore, every point on section C2 has infinity magnitude, but the argument varies from plus pi by 2 to minus pi by 2. See, in this case, r varies from 0 to infinity, that means infinity radius circle, it is an infinity radius circle, and here argument varies from plus, since it starts from this point to this point, this corresponding to plus 90 degree and this correspond to minus 90 degree. So we can say that argument varies from plus pi by 2 to minus pi by 2. And hence the mapping of the section C2 from S plane to G of S into H of S plane can be obtained by letting S equal to limit r tends to infinity r e raised to j theta. So this is a substitution equation. In the previous case C1, for C1 we are substituting S is equal to j omega, but in the case of curved path like C2 we can put instead of S as a limit r tends to infinity r e raised to j theta. Also we can say that theta varies from plus pi by 2 to minus pi by 2. Suppose we are considering an equation like this, and if we are given g of s and h of s is equal to this equation, and in this case the upside part represents the zeros and the lower side roots represents the poles. Suppose we are assuming that there are m zeros and there are n poles including the poles at the origin. See, s raised to y indicates the poles at the origin. So the total number of poles is m. For every practical system, say m will be greater than n. That means number of poles will be greater than number of zeros. So n greater than m. Also we have in the case of a circular party, we are making a substitution s is equal to r e raised to j theta, where r tends to infinity. When r tends to infinity, see, there is a term 1 plus st. What happened to this term? When r tends to infinity, then r tends to infinity means s tends to infinity, right? From this equation, s will be tending to infinity. So 1 plus st terms is approximately equal to is st, right? Since s has got a value of infinity, 1 plus st indicates that it is approximately equal to is st. So we can write g of s into h of s as that will be equal to k into st1 into st2 into st3 divided by s raised to y into sta into stb plus into stc. We can write it as k1 into s raised to m by s raised to n. See, k t1 t2 t3 divided by ta tb extra constant. So instead of that we can write it k1 into s raised to m by s raised to n, that will be equal to k1 divided by s raised to n minus m. Suppose we are in this equation, we are letting s tends to, see, s is equal to limit r tends to infinity r e raised to j theta. So we will get a g of s into h of s as, when we are applying that limit, we will get it value as k1 divided by limit r tends to infinity r e raised to j theta. Instead of s, we are substituting r e raised to j theta all raised to n minus m. Since there is a term 1 by r, here r is infinity, 1 by infinity equal to 0. So we can write it as 0 into e raised to minus j theta into n minus m. Here 0 represents the r value, okay. Similarly, here also another condition is that here in the case of C2, pi argument varies from plus pi by 2 to minus pi by 2. So we have this equation g of s into h of s. When theta varies from plus pi by 2, we will get g of s into h of s is equal to 0 into e raised to minus j pi by 2 into n minus m. So also, when the theta is equal to minus pi by 2, we will get g of s into h of s is equal to 0 into e raised to plus j pi by 2 into n minus m. So these are the two equations, and from these two equations, we can conclude that the section C2 of Nyquist contour in S-plane is mapped as circles or circular arc around the origin with radius tending to 0 in the g of s into h of s plane. See, actually this C2 portion is a circle of infinite radius and its argument varies from plus pi by 2 to minus pi by 2. So when this is situating in the S-plane now. When we are mapping this contour into g of s into h of s plane, we will get a value, see, we will get a contour. That means when theta equal to pi by 2, and that contour will have a value 0 into e raised to minus j pi by 2 into n minus m. Similarly, when theta equal to minus pi by 2, we will get a contour 0 into e raised to j pi by 2 into n minus m. That means 0 indicates the radius value. So when we are mapping a radius of infinite radius circle to g of s into h of s plane, we will get a circle or circular arc which is having radius 0 and argument varies from minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. So this is the Nyquist contour which is in the g of s into h of s plane. So next we have another section, that is C3. C3 varies from, C3 is this portion, you can see C3 varies from, this is a linear portion. So its equation, in the equation of g of s into h of s, we can substitute s is equal to j omega, and omega varies from minus infinity to 0. So we can write in step 5, the section C3, the value of omega varies from minus infinity to 0, and we can map the section C3 from S plane to h of s into g of s plane, and in this case we have the equation for that line as j omega. That means the equation for the line we will get, that is g of s into h of s. We will have a function g of s into h of s. In this we will substitute s is equal to j omega. Once we substitute that s is equal to j omega, we will get g of j omega into h of j omega, and we can say that omega will varies from minus infinity to 0. So we can draw the curve by giving omega to different values. For different values of omega, we will get different values of g of j omega and h of j omega. So the locus of g of j omega, h of j omega, when omega varies from minus infinity to 0, will be the g of s into h of s contour in the g of s into h of s plane, and that will be corresponding to the C3 section in the S plane. And actually this contour in the g of s and h of s plane is the inverse polar plot of g of j omega and h of j omega. See, actually this C2 C3 portion is similar to C1 portion, right? C1 is in this section, C3 is in the negative section. So we can say that this C3 is the inverse polar plot of C1, or these two are mirror images. So the inverse polar plot is given by the mirror image of the polar plot with respect to the real axis. And the next section is C4. You can see here. Next we have discussed about C1, C2, C3, and next we have a small section that is C4, that is also a semicircle and its radius is 0. Radius tends to 0. So in the case of semicircle, we will make the substitution S is equal to R e raised to j theta. So in that step we can say that the section C4 of Nyquist contour has a semicircle of 0 radius. Therefore, every point on the semicircle has a 0 magnitude, but the argument varies from minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. See, here the direction of that contour is from lower portion to lower to upper side. So the argument varies from minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. Hence, the mapping of section C4 from S plane to G of S into H of S plane can be obtained by letting S is equal to limit R tends to 0 R e raised to j theta. Since it is a circular portion, we will make the substitution for S as S is equal to limit R tends to 0 into R e raised to j theta. Here R is tending to 0 because it is a small semicircle that is situated near the origin. That is why we are taking R tends to 0. The argument varies from minus pi by 2 plus pi by 2. That depends upon the sign of the flow of the contour. So we have an example. G of s and h of s will have this form, and in this case we are saying that this function has m zeros and n poles, and these poles includes the poles at the origin also. For the practical system, n will be greater than n, and here we are making the substitution that is s tends to r e raised to j theta, right? And here it is a small semicircle, and so we are assuming that its radius is tending to 0. When the radius is tending to 0 means that s tends to 0, right? So 1 plus st terms tends to 1. Since st tends to 0, 1 plus st will give a value 1. So we will get the function g of s into h of s as k into 1 by s raised to y. So in this equation we are substituting the limit s tends to limit s is equal to limit r tends to 0 r e raised to j theta. So we are making that substitution, that will be equal to k divided by limit r tends to 0. Instead of s we are writing r e raised to j theta into y. See here at the denominator there is a term r, so that will be become equal to 0. So therefore 1 by 0 it will be equal to infinity into e raised to minus j theta into y. So here the argument varies from minus pi by 2 to plus pi by 2. So we are taking the upper and lower limit, that is when theta equal to minus pi by 2. When theta equal to minus pi by 2, g of s into h of s become infinity into e raised to j pi by 2 into y. Similarly, when theta equal to pi by 2, we will get the value of g of s and h of s equal to infinity into e raised to minus j pi by 2 into y. That means in this equation we can find that when we are mapping a Nyquist contour of 0 radius from the S plane to G of S and H of S plane, we will get another contour on the G of S and H of S plane which is having a radius of infinity radius. So from the above two equations we can conclude that the section C4 of Nyquist contour in the S plane is mapped as a circles or circular arc in G of S and H of S plane with origin as center and infinity radius. Similarly, if we have we don't have any poles on the origin, when there is no poles on the origin, see here it is indicated there is a pole on the origin. That is why we are not taking this point, we are taking a curve here by eliminating this cross point. Suppose if there is no poles at the origin, that means the Nyquist contour will look like this as shown in the figure. So we can solve it easily. Similarly, when there are different poles on the imaginary axis which is shown here. Here there is a cross mark which indicates a pole. there is another cross mark which is indicated another pole. There is another cross mark that indicates another pole. So we have to eliminate all these poles when we are choosing Nyquist contour. So we will take the session like this. Around the first pole there is a semicircle path. Around the second pole there is another semicircle path like this. And we have to solve for each and every term separately. That first we will solve for C4, next for C5, C6, C7, C8, C1, C2, C3. So first C1, if you are taking C1, you can see C1 is a linear part and here omega varies from 0 plus to omega 1. Omega varies from 0 plus to omega 1 minus and S value will be equal to j omega. Next we are taking C2. C2 is a curved portion and its omega varies from omega 1 minus to omega 1 plus, and here C2 we will have an equation. We have to utilize S is equal to r e raised to j theta. S is equal to limit r tends to 0, r e raised to j theta. Theta varies from minus pi by 2 plus pi by 2. That depends upon the sign of the flow. Similarly, in the case of section C3, it is a linear part, so we can write S is equal to j omega. Omega varies from plus omega 1 to infinity. That depends. That is obtained from the diagram. Similarly, we can plot each and every sections. So that's all about the procedure. Next, we will do a problem.